Hi, everybody. My name is Sheree Boudry. I'm the Youth Outreach Technician for the Monroe County Library System, which means I reach out to people about kids and books and classrooms. And my friend Marcia is telling me that the older elementary kids are getting worn out of the chapter read alouds. So we need to do some things with picture books, some things that are a little more fun, a little wackier, a little more interesting. So the ones that I'm throwing out to you today kind of are all over the place. First, I want to mention I promise this book, if you can see it, is by LeBron James, King James himself. So right there, you're going to catch a lot of kids' attention. That this man, who has used his NBA money to create a school that promotes reading, is now also an author, and every page talks about a promise. I promise to work hard and do what's right, to be a leader in this game of life. I promise to go to school and read as much as I can, to follow the rules and respect the game plan. So it's a simple rhyme scheme. It's probably a book that's intended for younger kids, but I think the two elements that kids would love is A, that it's LeBron James, B, that when you talk about all these promises, there's a way to bring these promises into your classroom, to create their own game plan, to talk about asking questions, second chances. And if you ask kids to create their own I promise statements, and to put them together could be a great extension activity. I also want to mention that the kids in this book are completely diverse. We have kids from all kinds of colors and ages and backgrounds and ability levels. So it's a wonderful, there's wonderful illustrations of all kinds of kids. So that's LeBron's new book, I Promise. Now I want to talk about some funny stuff. This is The Legend of Rock, Paper, Scissors. You might be surprised that some of your kids don't even know what rock, paper, scissors is. So you get to use some time teaching that particular skill, which they'll probably use their whole lives. And then you can solve everything in your classroom with rock, paper, scissors. If you've ever wondered where the game comes from, this book explains it all. And it starts long ago in an ancient and distant realm called the Kingdom of Backyard. There lived a warrior named Rock, not the Rock, Rock. Rock was the strongest in all the land, but he was sad because no one could give him a worthy challenge. Rock traveled to the mysterious forest of over by the tire swing, where he met a warrior who hung on a rope holding a giant's underwear. Drop that underwear and battle me, you ridiculous wooden clip man. I will pinch you and make you cry, Rock warrior. Rock versus Clothespin, and Rock is victorious. Now let me say, this page repeats a lot of times, so as soon as you get kids to say it with you, you know you've got them. Even though he had won, Rock was still unsatisfied, so he journeyed on to the mystical tower of Grandma's favorite apricot tree. And there he was met by an odd and delicious fruit. You, sir, look like a fuzzy little butt. What? I challenge you to a duel, said the apricot. Then let us begin the battle. Now, you've said underwear and butt in the first 3 pages. They're in. Rock versus apricot. I will beat you, Rock, with my tart and tangy sweetness. But Rock is victorious. And it goes on from there, as Rock meets paper, as Rock meets scissors, how it all came about, how they ended up this day still in competition. The other thing I want to mention about this book, you can see this little gray thing inside it. This is a Vox book, and this gray thing is a recorder where when you turn it on and you activate it, they will read the book to you. So kids can follow along the pages and hear the story read if you need a break from reading, and they can plug in headphones if they just want to listen to it themselves. So that's The Legend of Rock, Paper, Scissors. Next, I want to talk about Misunderstood Shark. This is a brand new book, and you can see by the look of it that it definitely looks like a picture book for little kids. But like a lot of picture books, the humor and the words that they use and what's going on really is better for older kids because younger kids just don't get it. And it's Jellyfish is filming their TV show. Hello, people. Today on Underwater World with Bob, fun facts about shark. And then they all gotta run away because the shark is coming. Shark, the people are watching. Don't eat that fish in front of the people. The people can see me, says Shark. You misunderstood. I wasn't going to eat him. I was just showing him my new tooth. Fun fact about that, sharks can grow and lose 30,000 teeth in a lifetime. So you see that it's got a very definite sense of humor, but you got to be able to read it the right way, and kids got to be able to understand what part is scary, what part is silly, and what he's doing after all. He's misunderstood in many ways. There's tons of cool shark facts in here. So it's a great book to introduce more books about sharks, nonfiction books about sharks, conversation about sharks, or just enjoy it as it is. Sometimes I think for kids, you got to step away from the usual and surprise them. This is the Guinness Book of World Records 2021. It's a reference book, which means you're not supposed to be able to check it out, but I did. So if you talk to Marcia, maybe she'll work something out. But most of us are going to know what the Guinness Book of World Records is. A lot of kids don't, or they've only seen online versions. And when you realize how many words, pictures, stories, how much information is in here, you can get kids to read or listen to smaller snippets or just interesting, weird trivia. When you open randomly to a page like the heaviest jack-o'-lantern, the largest bunch of grapes, up to really creepy things like everything here I'm looking at is on the road. So there's all kinds of stuff about cars. The lady with the longest fingernails freaks me out. And then the record that I used to stump kids with in last year's version was the YouTube site that has had the most views. None of your kids will get it because it's so that's a really fun change. A nonfiction book. Nonfiction in general is great, but something that has those little bits and pieces of information is fantastic. This is one of my new favorites from 2019. It's called Rumple Buttercup, The Story of Bananas Belonging and Being Yourself. It's by Matthew Gubley. And while it is a chapter book, it reads very fast and quickly. And it is basically about a creature whose name is Rumple Buttercup. In this tree, there lived a monster named Rumple Buttercup, and he had 5 crooked teeth, 3 strands of hair, green skin, and his left foot was slightly bigger than his right. He was weird. And so Rumple worried that if anyone ever saw him, and again, some of these illustrations and cartoons, I don't know how well you can see them, but they need an older viewer to really understand what's going on. He spent his entire life hiding underground in a rain drain, right by a garbage can in the middle of town, where no one would ever see him. But he could see them, laughing and playing, singing and dancing, walking dogs and jumping rope, but most of all, not being weird. More than 3 strands of hair, no green skin, lots of straight teeth. Living underground wasn't all bad though. Rumple made the most of it in a nice little home that he decorated with old garbage he'd found in the can outside. And it goes on to tell Rumple's story, and you can read this in the span of what it would take you to read most picture books. Rumple has some adventures. He finds out some things he didn't know before. And in the end, there's a pajama jam. I'm just saying, how it gets there is really fun. I read that book a lot last fall when it first came out through the winter. And I never had a group, whether it was little kids, upper elementary, or even mixed family groups, that people didn't love this book because it's funny, but it's also has really cool message. Just want to say that. If you need something to give you some ideas for your kids, this is Share Your Rainbow. The subtitle is 8 Artists Draw Their Hope for the Future. A lot of these folks over the pandemic felt that kids were really facing so much stress. So they got together and created a book that has a story about a rainbow, and each page is different. Different illustrators are taking the rainbow theme and, in the time of quarantine, expanding it through art. I cannot wait to yak with my neighbors and laugh with my neighbors and start snarf up toasted marshmallows with my neighbors. I look forward to some sleepy Saturday when every boring thing feels extraordinary. Okay, be back in a bit. Got to go buy paper clips. New places await where I'll be welcomed by smiling faces and share food with friends. So they're talking about the things that they would like to do, that they're looking forward to. And each illustrator has made such incredible art on these pages. You could talk forever about what is different between one and another, what you like, what appeals to you. You can create your own rainbow stories using your kids' own artistic abilities. You can look at each artist and call in some of their other books and see the amazing, incredible work that they've done, and everything from dark to light, but you see that rainbow cropping up on every page somewhere, in the cake, on the dog's sweater, so that you know it's still there. I loved this book when I saw it. I think it's great for kids that are working from home. I think it's great. I think we're going to do a library program with it where we ask kids to create what's your rainbow, what will it look like, and what will you do? And it's a way of looking at what's happening to all of us right now and giving it some context. It is temporary. Other things, good times will come back, and what kind of things do you want to do? So I love this for the beauty of the book. All the profits, if you end up buying this book, go to World Central Kitchen, which is feeding people during this crisis time. And what wonderful things you can do with it, with all ages of kids, even a family activity around that. I want to jump off from there to two incredible stories based on real people. This is Mary, who wrote Frankenstein, and it's all about Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. If your kids don't know Frankenstein, it's a great time to talk about it. Watch the movie, talk about the monster, talk about the differences between the book and the movie. And I have to tell you that this story of Mary Shelley writing Frankenstein was brand new to me. She was at a dinner party. She was a teenager. She was with other authors who were talking about their work in a way that excluded her because she was so young and she was just a girl after all. And when she came up with this amazing, dark, creepy story that has lasted longer than some of the things they wrote, it's a wonderful book. So this is Mary, who wrote Frankenstein. There are actually, within the past year, a couple other amazing picture books about this event. So any of them would be really cool to read with your kids. A little late for Halloween, but who doesn't like to keep the creepy continuing? In that same vein is The Roots of Rap. And this may be a wonderful way to get your kids' attention, that you're actually talking about something they like. And then you can talk about what this page shows, which is a record player for vinyl, just saying. This goes back into folktales, street rhymes, spirituals rooted in spoken word. Props to poets Hughes and Dunbar, published, ain't you heard? So it goes all the way back to African-American poets. You could talk about Dunbar. You could talk about Langston Hughes. Soul man James Brown was shouting, "I'm black and I'm proud," giving birth to funk-based line, pulsing loud. You got to practice this one a little bit to get that out. So it's a wonderful book that talks about the history of rap, obviously, and goes through the early days, the influences, how it came about. You see some early rappers that your kids might not know, or entertainers. You could play their music. You could talk about their poetry. You could talk about how rap and poetry and spoken word are all connected. And it brings it into the present day where they may, even now, not have heard of some artists like Queen Latifah, who was a rapper before she was in the movies they may have seen. So the roots of rap, even though it's scary to think that rap music is historical at this point, truly is. I want to mention, this is just one of my favorite new books for everybody. It's called This Way, Charlie. It is inspired by a real animal friendship in a time where we're all looking for ways to talk more about kindness without, making it a lesson, a very special lesson. This is based on a true story about a goat named Jack and a horse named Charlie. And Charlie has come to stay on the Open Bud Ranch, which is a place that has room for all animals, even if they are troubled, even if they've been hurt, so they have a safe place to live. And when Charlie arrives, we find out he can't see, and he doesn't see Jack, and they run into each other, and Jack is not happy. Jack could only see out of one of his eyes. And the story goes on to talk about how when Charlie has all these difficulties because he can't see, he can't find where food is, he can't find where, how to get back to the barn, he ends up going in circles. Jack steps up and helps out Charlie. And after the first time, it becomes a habit. He takes him to and from the field. He helps him find his way to water and to shade, and he always helps him get back to the barn. But Jack never goes into the barn himself. Jack has had some terrible experiences being inside. And so when a storm comes up and Jack won't go into the barn, I don't know if he sees, Charlie comes out to cover Jack in the rain. And he protects his friend. And eventually, when they are lost and they have to work together to find their way back, Charlie gets stuck in a tree. He gets caught and he can't free himself. And the only way that Jack can help his friend is to go into the barn and get help from the other animals and from their human caretaker. And they come and help him rescue Charlie. And it is just, and in the end, they're all in the barn together. Jack and Charlie are part of the pile. And it's such an incredible story. I am obsessed with these unusual animal friendships where the elephant is worried because the dog is sick. This one is based on a true story, and there's so many others. What a great way to talk to your kids about kindness in, like I say, something that doesn't push the lesson home, but gives them a chance to really talk about what were both of them afraid of, how did their friends help, how could it have been that they were in the right place at the right time for each other. So lots and lots of things to talk about, but also just a beautiful, wonderful story. And I want to end with today, since we did the beautiful story, now we're going to do the subversive. And the subversive is pretty much anything by Mac Barnett and John Klassen. This is Sam and Dave Dig a Hole. This is The Wolf, the Duck, and the Mouse. And this, of course, is Circle and Square. Triangle isn't here, but there is one. And something I love Mac Barnett. He has a very subversive sense of humor. It's pretty sophisticated. So again, these are picture books that look like they're for little kids that really work better with older kids, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th grade, because they need to get the humor behind it. John Klassen is the illustrator, and he uses very simple colors, very neutral colors, very basic. So these are not colorful, fun, 1st grade books. These are truly funny and odd books for older kids. In Sam and Dave Dig a Hole, you can see Sam and Dave there in the front. You're going to want to read this book to yourself a couple times before you share it with your classroom. It's very important that you pay attention to the picture pages in the beginning, where the title page is, look at all the details because it's going to come into play. And on Monday, Sam and Dave dug a hole. There's very few words, story's pretty basic. When should we stop digging? Asked Sam. We are on a mission, said Dave. We won't stop digging until we find something spectacular. The hole got so deep that their heads were underground, but they still had not found anything spectacular. We need to keep digging, said Dave. Now, I don't know how well you can see this, but right next to where they are digging, there is a giant diamond, which they, of course, have dug right past while the dog looks at it. So they kept digging, and now it's below them. And then they decide, well, they really haven't found anything, so they're going to go in a different direction, and they go right past us. And I'm not kidding. By now, every kid in your class is like, no, it's right there. Look, oh, how could they miss it? The dog knows, the dog, and it goes on and on like that, where they keep missing something spectacular. And they can't understand why it's such a problem. Really cool thing about this book is if you draw kids' attention to the illustrations, in the beginning, the pages are almost blank and empty, but when you get to the hole being deeper and deeper and deeper, you see that it's all filled with the dirt as they go down and down and down. They get very tired, something weird happens, and in the end, it seems as if they're just going home, but if you look closely, there's a lot more to the story than met the eye. And at that point, when you talk to your kids about it, none of you will agree on what happened in this book. The Wolf, the Duck, and the Mouse is told like a very traditional fairy tale. There is a wolf, and one morning he meets a mouse, eats him up. The mouse is so worried to be in the wolf's stomach. This is a terrible thing, but then there's a light, and he realizes there's a duck in there. And the duck's in bed and is angry because the mouse has woken him up, because the duck now lives in the wolf's stomach. And it turns out it's a good life. They make lunch. They have lots of things to do. And when the mouse says, don't you miss being outside? The dog says, no, every day I had to worry about getting swallowed up. And in here, there's no worry. They even have a dance party at one point. Now, what happens in the end, I can't tell you, because like every good fable, something goes weird. But this is another one of those books, because it's Mac Barnett, that will get your kids yelling at the book. Oh my gosh, wait, why is that happening? Don't they see? And the kids totally get what's going on here, even though the characters don't seem to understand. These are, again, picture books that I think work better with older kids, but Matt Barnett also has some incredible chapter books. This might be a great way to get them to jump off. You read these and kids love them because they're weird and subversive and funny. And then there's like Mac Barnett, Kid Spy. There's a couple other series that take kids to the next level of reading because they are chapter books, but might interest them because the author was so weird. This is Circle and Square. I don't have time to read from them today very much, but let me just tell you, they're very simple, straightforward pictures, and very simple things happen, but somebody always gets tricked, and one of the shapes always ends up in a predicament they didn't ever hope for, and their other friends think it's so funny. There are several other Barnett Klassen books, the hat series, I Want My Hat Back, Have You Seen My Hat? You could use one of these every day in your classroom, and both the author and the illustrator have an online presence, so you can talk with them there and learn more about them. Your kids will absolutely love Barnett books. Have I got this one backwards and upside down? Yes, I did. There we go. Square, circle. I hope that you heard about something here today that gives you and your kids some entertainment, something else to think about. We have even more at the library. Feel free to browse online. You can click on any book that you want and then review them at your leisure. These are just some of the titles that I wanted to share with you today. Thanks a lot. Thanks for listening.